Okay, well, welcome everybody. As you've just heard, I am Mark Sussman. I have the privilege of being the CEO of this amazing organization, the Gates Foundation. And we are gathered here today to celebrate a quarter century of progress. And it's progress with impact, and it's progress that's due not just to the Gates Foundation, but very much to all of our partners, many of whom are here, but all around the world. But we're also very acutely aware that we're gathering at a moment where we are facing literally the toughest political and economic headwinds to our agenda since we were established in 2000. And that much of that amazing progress is currently at risk. So today is also an opportunity to look forward, to confront the challenges and take a clear-eyed look at what is going to be possible in the future. As most of you have heard, thanks to a historic philanthropic commitment earlier this morning from our host, my boss, Bill Gates, we believe that notwithstanding today's setbacks, the next 2 decades still have every chance of being more impactful than the last 25. That we can and will see even more progress in the 2 key metrics we have chosen to judge ourselves on: life saved and opportunities provided for the poorest and most vulnerable here in the United States and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Bill Gates.
Well, good morning. I'm not one for looking back much, but we've got, such incredible anniversaries this year, and particularly the 25 years of the Gates Foundation. During the 1990s, Microsoft was doing very well, and so that's when I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do with this wealth? How much should go to the kids? How much do I want to consume? And how should the bulk of it go back to society? And I was trying to figure out, was there anything dramatic, anything that would be significant that could be done? Obviously, I was spoiled by the computer revolution and how digital tools, including the software from Microsoft, had made a big difference. And it made me think about innovation, surprising innovation that could do big things. And so as I was studying these foundations from the past and the work they had done, one of the articles I ran into in 1997 by Nick Kristof, who's here with us today, talked about deaths from diarrhea. And I wrote a note on it to my dad saying, hey, this could be something we could help with. And it was through that journey that I came to understand that there was a vaccine, rotavirus vaccine, which is the cause of most diarrheal deaths. And it was being given to the rich kids, but it was not available to the rest of the kids in the world. So it was deeply ironic that we'd invented this thing, and yet it was far too expensive, and there was no funding to get it to all the world's countries. And so that was a kind of opportunity that made me super enthusiastic. So it was in the year 2000 that I made the first big gift to the Gates Foundation. It became the largest foundation in the world. I can't say enough how my parents drove my values and specifically pushed me to be philanthropic. My mom talked about to whom much is given, much is expected. Tragically, she died 32 years ago, but really shaped me in a very strong way. My dad was also quite amazing, not only encouraging me, but also he was around to help out. In fact, my dad and Patty Stonesifer was here, did amazing work getting the foundation going while I was still full-time at Microsoft. This picture of my dad with Nelson Mandela and Jimmy Carter holding babies infected with HIV as part of a trip they made to Africa is one of my favorites. They were attacked at the time by the ANC as being agents of the pharmaceutical companies because Thabo Mbeki was sort of denying that HIV was caused by the virus, and so it was a very controversial thing. The person other than my parents who influenced me a great deal is, of course, Warren Buffett. Warren influenced me before I met him in 1991. He wrote an article about giving all your money away and how leaving large sums to kids sometimes wasn't even a favor to them. And so people should think in a generous way like he was. I learned so much from Warren, both his advice to me and his example. Of course, in 2006, he decided that some of his wealth would be given away through the Gates Foundation, and probably the most generous gift ever given by somebody to someone else's foundation. We received over $43 billion in stock from Warren, and he continues to be very generous. Of course, it was very poignant last Saturday when at his 60th annual meeting, he discussed that he'll be stepping down as CEO of Berkshire, but he's still as wise as ever and had fantastic messages as part of that annual meeting that I was there with him at. So, the foundation so far, during the 25 years, has given away a little bit more than $100 billion. We started in 2001 giving a bit over $1 billion. You can see that it grows, including particularly after the Buffett gift in 2006. And then you can see what it's been spent on. We picked two big causes, education and health would be our main ones. Health here we've split into two categories. Our health work is both discovery, where we create new tools and make them very, very inexpensive, and then healthcare delivery, where with partners, we finance these tools so they can get out to everyone in the world. The discovery piece, we can fund a lot of that ourselves. Areas like malaria, TB, we're big funders. We invite other people in. But the place that we're not nearly large enough to achieve what should be done is in the delivery piece. And that's where we've had other philanthropies, but also rich world governments that have given between 1% to 2% of their budget for these global health causes. And the work in global health in terms of measuring the results, making sure we're having impact, from the year 2000 to today, we've come a long ways. And a lot of this, I can best be summarized in terms of saving lives. Now, it's daunting when you talk about saving millions of lives or tens of millions of lives. It's somehow not as evocative if I put up, one person's picture and said we saved that person. But in fact, we can think of the parents and the communities and how impactful this is. In fact, we got a short clip that hopefully will bring that home. Two very specific memories for me are, one is being in a malaria ward in Kenya with over 40 children and being told that half of those kids would not survive because of the malaria they were experiencing. Another experience was in South Africa, where I was meeting with the parents of a child that had died, and they had been asked for permission for us to do what we call a minimal invasive autopsy, which allows us to see exactly what caused the death. And the parents talked about how they were proud to give permission because it would mean that less parents would have to go through what they were going through. So the overall picture is the graph that's my favorite ever, showing this progress. Childhood deaths have been coming down for hundreds of years, but the period by far of the greatest progress reducing childhood deaths is the last 25 years. It was it's almost 10 million at the turn of the century, and now a bit below 5 million. Now, how do we do it? That's something to wish for, but how do you achieve it? Well, it turns out children die of a pretty modest number of things. Two of the diseases are pneumonia and diarrhea. And as I said, there were great vaccines, but only available in rich countries. And so we funded the creation of new vaccines for pneumococcus and rotavirus, and we got the price of the rotavirus vaccine down to $1. This is a pneumococcus vaccine. We got that down from over $30 down to now $2, and we have a roadmap to get it down to $1. And so there was a lot of upstream work that we did, but the key partner was Gavi that we played a role in creating at the very beginning of the foundation. And it pays for these vaccines for the poorest country. And it's just miraculous the role that they've played. Another big disease, somewhat of children, but also adults, is HIV. And it was soon after the turn of the century that President Bush created both the bilateral program PEPFAR and had the US be the most generous participant in the multilateral global fund that also works on malaria and tuberculosis. And the work of the Global Fund has been unbelievable. We've made sure there's new drug regimens that are safer and cheaper, and made advanced purchases commitments to those, and then Global Fund takes and works with each of the countries to come out with a plan of how to get those delivered. We have incredible HIV tools that are recently discovered. Lenacapavir from Gilead is a shot that if you get, you're protected for 6 months. We're going to drive the price of that down. Merck is far along in a trial on an oral, just a pill, which we'll be able to make very cheap that also is a protective. And further out is a way of using gene editing, not only to cure sickle cell, but also to cure HIV. And so we're going to turn that into a single shot that can be very inexpensive. The progress on malaria is not quite as dramatic as the other diseases. This is a tough disease. COVID was a setback in terms of delivering these tools. Also with malaria, you constantly get resistance. For a while, a drug called chloroquine worked, but then chloroquine resistance spread throughout Africa, and that was a huge setback. Even the bed nets that we created, that first generation of pyrethroid bed nets, the mosquitoes evolved around it, and so we had to move to what we call the dual insecticide bed net. That's this one here, that by making big advanced purchase commitments, now the cost of this net is down at about $5, which is same as that first generation net was. We have incredible tools in the pipeline. One of them is called Gene Drive, which is a way of either making it so mosquitoes can't carry malaria or that we reduce that mosquito population. So even though it's been a tough one, we do think there's a real chance in the next 20 years to eradicate malaria. One thing that, whenever you look at these statistics, important to remember is that the portion of the babies born in Africa is going up quite substantially. At the turn of the century, it's like 15%. Now it's over 25%. And so, we wish the babies would choose to be born in Scandinavia, but in fact, somehow, they're choosing to be born in northern Nigeria, which makes it a challenge to make sure we give them what they deserve. The last global health thing that I'll mention is the work that we do on polio. Polio eradication starts in 1988, before we're involved in any way, and that's Rotary International and other partners going after it. And as you can see here, they made very, very rapid progress to get the numbers down. But the inset shows you recently, even though we're down at a small number of cases, it's been very hard. We have cases in Pakistan and Afghanistan that we've never gotten to zero. We have cases in Africa where a so-called vaccine-derived type 2 form of the virus has gotten out, and it's affecting a lot of children there. So we have to solve Pakistan, Afghanistan, Africa, and we have to continue to raise the money for this effort so that we can take it all the way to zero. I mentioned that education was also a big focus. There we don't have the, great. There we don't have the same miraculous result, like, twice as many people getting college degrees, but there are some exciting, important things that have been done. This shows you college completion rates going up. We've been able to back a lot of exemplar institutions, some great charter schools. A lot of the big universities, ASU, SNHU, WGA, been increasing their enrollment and doing very high quality work. We work on curriculum, partners like Zern, Illustrated Math, Carnegie, Khan Academy, which is now bringing AI tools into the classroom and showing great progress there. Over 20,000 students who've gotten scholarships that we provided going on to do incredible work. And another area for us has been agriculture. And that might be surprising, and yet, when you study what the poorest in the world do and how you can lift them up, making sure that their crops are more productive or they suffer less seasons where they have a crop failure, it's a very big deal. And in fact, these crops are very challenged by climate change. Africa's a net food importer, But even despite the population growth and climate change, we think by improving the seeds, getting them better advice, better access to fertilizer, Africa can become a net food exporter, and we can get more nutritious foods to the children. We do things like take chicken genetics and crossbreed to have chickens that lay more eggs, a lot more healthy, and we have over 200 million of those chickens that have gone out to raise women's income. Well, I won't be able to touch on all the areas the foundation works in. Here I list some of the others. Our work on pandemics, the creation of the Giving Pledge, early work to get computers into libraries and have access there. Tuberculosis, the largest infectious disease killer, where we have an incredible vaccine trial outstanding. Sanitations, digital finance, family planning, where we have new tools like very low-cost hormonal IUD that will be very impactful. So there's a huge pipeline of innovations in all the areas that we work in. As Mark mentioned, in a way, this is a surprising time to come together and state our optimism about what can be done, because we are in an incredible crisis. The funding cuts, the money that's been cut off from the US in a very abrupt way, the pressure on Europe, where partly to raise their defense budgets, they're cutting their aid budgets, where they've been the most generous over time. It is tragic. And what it's going to mean is that for the first time in a long time, that childhood death number is going to go back up. And so what we're facing is millions of additional deaths. Now, I believe that the case will make to the rich countries to restore this money, where we ask for somewhere between 1% to 2% of their money to save these tens of millions of lives, to create stability in growing economies, and to create the capacity to avoid pandemics emerging and sweeping worldwide. That proposition will get these resources restored over time. Also on our side, of course, is an increase in very generous philanthropists. We have a number of our great philanthropic partners here today. Tobacco is one of the programs that there's been great progress, and we're not the largest funder there. It's actually Bloomberg, who works with us in many areas. Has been the leader in all of that. So you're going to hear more from us on this crisis. In late June, we have a Gavi fundraising in Brussels, and I'm afraid it probably won't be very good news. The metric is, can we raise as much as we did 5 years ago, or is it going to be 50 or 60% as much? And that's going to mean not being able to buy vaccines that we've been able to in the past. The pipeline of innovations, I'll just mention a few that I'm thrilled about. We're finally getting to the bottom of malnutrition. We're getting new tools that babies that are born prematurely, we can help their lungs develop so that they don't die of asphyxiation. I mentioned the malaria gene drive, the HIV gene edit cure. Some of our interventions are not as complex and technical as those. One of the ones that's had miraculous results is using this drape, which you put under a mother while she's delivering, and it's got a little cuff in it that'll show you how much bleeding has taken place. And so we showed that with a very low threshold, you can save over 70% of the lives where, tragically, a woman would bleed to death, because once you see that, then you give these $2 of drugs that absolutely stop the bleeding. Our innovation pipeline is being accelerated substantially by the use of AI. AI tools to understand biology in the cell. But what many people probably don't appreciate is how dramatic the use of AI will be for equity. We're going to use AI for delivery, and so everyone talking their local dialect with their cell phone will get fantastic health advice. Every farmer will hear about the weather, understand their soil, what seeds they should plant, what the prices are, and so they'll get advice that's better than what even a rich farmer gets today. And AI tutors, things like Khan Amigo, and being done by many partners, are already showing great promise to help in education. So these are some of the reasons we say the next 20 years can be more impactful. As part of this, something I've been thinking about for several years is being announced today, which is my commitment to put virtually all my wealth into the foundation. This is a pretty simple chart that just shows my wealth has gone up, and that will go down. It doesn't go all the way to zero, but 98% of the way there. And to close, what's it all about? What are the values? What are the dreams? It's about ending the scourge of infectious disease. It's about having mothers survive, kids be well-nourished, great education that can lead people to prosperity. Now, we won't achieve all of these things completely in the next 20 years, but I think we can, with the kind of partnerships and support from people here, we can go a long ways, and I'm very excited about that. Thank you. I sit here.
So, thank you, Bill. Amazing, truly amazing historic announcement in the history of philanthropy and in the Gates Foundation. And I'd now like to ask Emma Tucker, the editor of the Wall Street Journal, to come and join Bill and me on stage and ask us a few tough and challenging questions.
Well, hello again, Bill. Hello, Mark, and hello to everyone. And I just want to say it's really nice to be up here talking about an announcement which is unequivocally a piece of good news, in spite of everything else. So listen, I wanted to start where we left off with the graph there. You're giving away, I want to talk about you, Bill. Where does giving away all your wealth leave you? Are you going to have to downsize, tighten your belt?
Well, I'll be 90 by the time it's all given away, and I'll make sure I have enough to buy pickleball rackets, tennis rackets, various things. I mostly, taking care of supporting my kids in a generous way, and so the money's there for the foundation, and it's the combination of that money plus the amount of money that's already in the foundation trust, with pretty modest assumptions about returns, that makes us confident that we'll have over $200 billion in resources during the 20-year period.
I want to go back and ask a bit more about why now. What was the thinking that led you to make this announcement today? I mean, I'm assuming that this has been something you've been thinking about for a while, but what led up to the announcement?
This year is pretty unusual for me. My dad would be 100. I'll be 70, which seems like a very old age. Microsoft celebrated its 50th anniversary, and I got to do that with Steve Ballmer and Satya just a few weeks ago. And, I'll be 90 in 20 years. And, I want the Gates Foundation, which has great people, great partnerships, to be able to go full speed ahead. There will be other rich people alive and energetic, and they'll understand the geopolitics 20 years from now. They'll understand what AI has done or not done 20 years from now. So I'm not that worried that as we increase our partnerships during this 20-year period, whatever remains of this work can be done. So there's not some notion that the Gates Foundation would be around forever. There never was, but it was much further out in time. It was like 20 years after I died was going to be the sunset date before.
Actually, on that, I was going to ask, why have you chosen to close the foundation rather than have it continue its work as your legacy?
Well, the legacy I dream about is that when people see the word malaria, they go, "What was that?" It's, I remember as a kid reading Dickens books, and they talked about consumption, and I had no idea what was consuming these people. Of course, that was tuberculosis, which, although it's gone in rich countries, it's still killing 1.3 million people a year. And so, there is no goal that the Gates Foundation would have any particular legacy.
And there's no desire for your name then to live on? I mean, not everybody's so modest.
No, there's nothing special about that. I'm very lucky to have the fortune I have. There's a lot of other people contributing to these things. Maybe I'll be remembered for my software prowess at a young age, but I think doubling down so people know that we can spend at an even greater rate than we are today, that's the best possible choice.
So you set out the challenges, the backdrop to everything that's going on, and perhaps, Mark, you could answer this question. Does the pullback on spending around foreign aid from the US and certainly from other governments, how does that affect your work? I mean, can you be more specific about the difficulties that that's creating for the foundation?
Yes, so as Bill says, the main focus on looking ahead at the next 20 years has been really us reflecting and with Bill and with the board over the last 18 months about where and how can we make the greatest impact, and really being able to chart a pathway where we can plausibly actually let you know the interventions and the steps that can be done to bring that preventable child mortality number down as close to zero as possible, to end malaria and polio, to really halt the burden of infectious diseases. But all of those are built on our lessons of successes over the last 25 years. And none of that great, amazing work was done on our own. It was done with partners across the global south, across the global north, other philanthropists. But really, if you take which two governments were our strongest partners over that first quarter century, we would have to say by volume of resources and technical expertise, they were the US and the United Kingdom. Both of those are now governments making significant cuts. The UK just announced a 40% cut to its aid budget, coming on top of some historic cuts that were made under Prime Minister Johnson. President Trump have obviously announced their intention to make significant cuts. The truth is, we simply cannot achieve that vision of goal in 2045 unless there is some continued targeted support from those partners. And so what we're doing is we're really trying to use a little bit of this announcement and the data to say, we understand there are constraints, there are real fiscal constraints facing these countries that are forcing them, but with the resources that remain, it is so critical to focus on the highest impact interventions that we know are going to save lives and build lives, and do it in an incredibly cost-effective way. As Bill showed with his vaccine props up there, we've driven down the costs of these vaccines, bed nets, tenfold over the decade. We're reaching many more people, and the low and middle income countries where we work with are also stepping up themselves, but they need some time to be able to do that, to build in the self-reliance. And so we're hoping, it wasn't the original intent, but given the reality of the moment, that our commitment to being stable and reliable over the next 2 decades at this level of resources will be a platform where we can crowd back in some of those critical high-income countries like the US and UK, but also help really build the strength within the countries and communities where we operate.
So Bill, Bill, I was going to say you're somebody that people pick up the phone to, so it sounds to me like you need to get on that phone. When I saw you in January, you had recently seen President Trump, and you told me that you were frankly quite impressed by the way in which he listened to what you were outlining to him. Have you spoken to him since January when we've had the announcement of these cuts, and are you still somewhat impressed?
Well, I had a really good dinner with him December 27th, and then a short meeting on February 5th where I said that what was going on with the USAID, was way beyond any elimination of waste, and even that case where the money to prevent children getting HIV in Mozambique was misconstrued as condoms for Hamas, which just kind of shows how much thought the group that did that put into their work. So, given what he said to me in the dinner, I'm very hopeful that we won't get this scale of HIV cut, that we'll get a continued commitment to Gavi for vaccines or polio. I admit there's budget pressures and there's other voices talking to him, but I think I'll get a chance to talk with him and the Congress. And if we were able to get to something like a 15 to 20% cut, then we can be smart about which things were the lowest impact, and it won't be a tragedy. We won't have to see that death number go up. With something like HIV, where you just abruptly cut off the medicines, very quickly people's viral load goes up. And not only does their health worsen, but they start to infect other people. And so, we could literally, in the worst case, get back to the death level that we haven't seen for over a decade.
And when you talk about other voices in the ear of the president, I think you're probably referring to other tech billionaires. Have you been able to speak to Elon Musk, who hasn't hidden his very forceful thoughts around USAID? Have you been able to talk to him about where you're coming from on this?
Well, I think when it comes to knowledge of USAID, as brilliant as Elon is, I actually know more about it than he does. I've been in Nigeria and met the people who work for USAID. I've been in DRC. These are heroic people. Probably other than the military, the most heroic people who work for the U.S. government. And the work they do makes a huge difference. So his characterization of, it's a criminal enterprise, or it's worms, or, it belongs in the wood chipper, I think was not based on having much data, just like the condoms for Hamas, or, he said in a cabinet meeting that he'd accidentally cut off the Ebola prevention work, but put it back on. Well, that's not true. He canceled all the Ebola work. They're all fired. They're all gone. And so objectively, I think the people who are there full-time, including the Congress, need to look at this. We may not get every program back, but the benefit to the world, the United States, particularly for people who have religious values, I think is unarguable.
What do you think it will take to sort of tip the balance back again, beyond the work you're doing and speaking out? I mean, do you think that something might happen or some trend might appear that will shift the thinking in countries like the UK and the US, where they've, for perhaps pragmatic reasons, have stepped away?
Well, the UK has, is saying they will go back to the higher levels. I will say the 0.5% to the 0.3% came as a real surprise to us, because the Labour Party in the UK has been a champion. Gordon Brown, Tony Blair, who we worked with quite closely, did great work. And I do think The UK voters are very proud. They were the biggest giver to Gavi. We were the second biggest. The United States was the third biggest there. They're also a huge giver to Global Fund. And so, obviously, we want to get back to 0.5% and eventually to 0.7%. And there's a lot of advocates in the UK, I think, who will help us make that case.
Yeah, maybe if I just build on that a little, I think one of the challenges when you get these generic discussions about aid is you lose focus on what you're talking about. And I think what we're trying to do, what we hope our partners are doing, is that when you concretely talk about what it means, here is that video about those poor kids who did not get to live to their first birthday. And if you explain to a taxpayer in the US or the UK or anywhere in Europe that for less than $1 of their tax expenditures, we can absolutely guarantee that that child is going to survive and have a life, and their mother will survive with them, then I think people really respond and say, I'm absolutely willing to have my tax dollars or tax pounds or tax euros devoted to that. And so it's making that case very concretely, and I think that's the same is true for political leaders. As Bill says, we've really truly believe our mission and vision, that vision that every person deserves the chance to a healthy, productive life, is an apolitical, non-partisan set of universal human values. And we believe, whether it's Republicans or Democrats here in the US, or whatever political party around the world, when you can make that case concretely, people listen and are responsive. And whatever the short-term challenges, that's a case we're going to be making very aggressively in coming weeks and months.
So just to get back to today's announcement then, and this huge 200 billion, Bill, this is perhaps an unfair question, but what do you said to the Wall Street Journal this morning that the world faces many problems. What would you most like to be able to achieve with the 200 billion that you announced today?
Well, as large as that number is, we can't do it alone. A lot of that money will go to drive creation of new tools. And there we're less dependent on others. We've had some great co-funding from the US government and others on that, but the tools piece, the R&D is impactful. It is a lot smaller than the overall delivery costs. It's on the delivery piece, people may not realize, we're 20% of Gavi, so 80% is others. We're 6% of Global Fund. The only delivery thing that we are a very high percentage of is polio. We're depending on the year, we're either 40% or even somewhat more than that. And because that has a defined ending, we're willing to continue to do that as long as the other 60% continues. And the US piece of that is very, very critical. We should be able to reduce childhood death faster in these 20 years than in the last 25. We have tools in the pipeline that make us very optimistic about malaria. If we just had the existing tools, no, it can't be done. We're going to change vaccines, so instead of being a shot, it's just a little patch, so they're far, far easier to deliver. We have ways of bringing the costs down. Some of our cost reduction stuff, one thing I love about it is because we're so low cost oriented, some of these things, like the way you can deal with premature babies, will apply in every country and save tens of billions of dollars and save lots of lives. The HIV cure, the single shot, which is called in vivo, that will save hundreds of billions. We do research that proves, like with the HPV vaccine, you only need 1 dose, or with the pneumococcus, you only need 2 doses. So we're going to save rich world health systems over $200 billion with the work we do, because we take such a low-cost approach to doing these things. And I don't believe the causes we work on are out of fashion. I don't see how they ever can be. but 20 years from now, you can tell me whether I was right about that or not.
So much of your work, the work that the foundation does, revolves around vaccines. I wanted to ask, does some of the discussion and debate and misinformation around vaccines, is that affecting the work that you're doing?
Oh, absolutely. One thing to understand is whenever the U.S. casts doubts on vaccines, like the measles vaccine, you will get deaths in the United States, but you will get tens of deaths because kids here are very well nourished. And so when you get measles, it's like 4 out of 1,000 die. In Africa, where kids are not as well nourished, you get about 150 out of 1,000. And so when you cast the doubt here, it will kill 50 times as many African children because it'll make people in those countries start to wonder, okay, are we doing the right thing with these vaccines? The reason that we haven't had as much vaccine hesitancy in these countries is because very quickly you'll see the deaths. There's the famous case where Samoa, the measles vaccine got a bad reputation. Robert Kennedy went there, and they had 53 deaths. And they said, wow, when a baby dies of measles, it's a very awful death, and it's clearly measles. It's nothing else. And so people go, whoa, we could have stopped that. And so part of the problem in the U.S. is the incredible success we've had. The two diseases, pertussis and measles, are the ones that'll start to creep up a little bit as we're more lax about this. And, we don't know whether we can ever do measles eradication or not, because the rich countries may be the limiting factor that prevents us from doing that. It is another disease that can be eradicated and should be eradicated.
And do you have any thoughts about how you combat the sort of misinformation that goes out around vaccines?
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, we're constantly trying to sort of do that and explain. The best way to do it is, again, through the very human stories. And the reasons why vaccine take-up tends to be much stronger in parts of Africa or Asia is because the parents have seen the impact of those diseases and their children dying, and so there's a demand that gets built up. And so again, it's that storytelling element of being able to show and demonstrate and build that trust with communities and have community validators who themselves are trusted. And that's something we are looking at here in the US. Bloomberg Philanthropies is looking at some really important work here in the US that we're going to partner with them on. And then globally, it's helping build that community-wide trust, sending the sense of message, and it needs locally credible validators. That it's great that to have a foundation like ours speaking out or showing the charts, but in the end, as always, it's about human beings affirming with each other why this is so critically important.
And Bill, you said at the beginning of your presentation that you don't often look back, but I'm going to ask you to look back now and tell us, of the many achievements that the foundation has achieved, which is your favorite?
Well, it's pretty stunning that, Gavi, which it's literally the first year of the foundation, that gets pulled together, and Global Fund, which is just a couple of years later, those are probably the most impactful things we've done. Now, those worked partly because we fund like a meningitis vaccine, and we fund many, many new vaccines and all that cost reduction. But those would still be very much at the top of the list. And they go way beyond what I expected. I remember when Bono, was saying to me he was going to, for the PEPFAR thing, ask for $7 billion. I was like, you're crazy. Really? That's a lot of money. But sure enough, President Bush decided that should be done. And, part of that's gone to Global Fund and part to PEPFAR. And there's been, bipartisan support for that work. And now, this is the first time that's being questioned, which is ironic because this is the first time we have our sight on a cure, which would actually bring the emergency to the end. So it's tragic knowing that that tool's coming, that you don't keep people alive until you can deliver it.
So I want to ask, you said this announcement has given you the opportunity to show that philanthropy can really change the world. Who do you look to carry your torch? Who are you going to ask to step up and carry the torch for you?
Well, the philanthropists we work with, some are like Chris Hahn, Mike Bloomberg, are around my age. Some are a lot younger. I think people like Mark Zuckerberg, who's an early joiner, Dustin Moskovitz and Kerry are fantastic philanthropists. I think hopefully the norms in society are increasing that if you have huge amounts of wealth, people look to you and say, okay, what is it how are you going to give this money back? How are you going to take the skills that you clearly demonstrated in the for-profit game and take measures that aren't profit-driven and put some of your energy into that? And, I was just in India earlier this year. I was just in Singapore this week. Everywhere we go, we're creating communities of philanthropists that can work together. And, so for our work, having an Indonesian philanthropist, a Vietnamese philanthropist who are guiding our work in their country, you get our global expertise and their local knowledge, and those partnerships that are often with very young philanthropists, those are very hopeful.
Yeah, and maybe I can also just add a little bit to that, because I think the transformation of the sense of what is possible with philanthropy and really being smart about where is philanthropy truly complementary to the public sector and the private sector, that it should never be substituting for either. It has a critical role. And it was here in New York in 2006 with Patty in the room, with Warren in the room, with Melinda, with Bill, when Warren made that historic commitment that Bill talked about. And frankly, it actually was in response to that historic commitment that I joined the Gates Foundation. I never thought I would have a career in philanthropy. It truly didn't cross my mind, but I thought here is a place that I can be impactful and that really does play a role. And I think if you look back at the giving pledge that Bill, Melinda, and Warren started, the inspiration and leadership of many in the room, sort of domestically, like Mike Bloomberg and Carrie Tuna, globally like Ajay Piramal, who you'll hear from shortly, there has already been a transformation, but it's still far short of what it could or should be. We know there are the one group of people that got much wealthier over the last 7 years are the world's billionaires. And it's easier for me to say because I'm simply implement that I think it's an incredibly powerful opportunity and example that we hope others will take and follow the generous lead that Bill and Warren and Melinda and those in the room have been setting.
Great. Well, look, we're out of time, so I want to end on a positive note. Bill, what makes you optimistic?
Well, I'm optimistic naturally, so it'd be hard to avoid that. But I'm also optimistic objectively. And, the tool that I believe in is surprising people with great innovation. And so I know, the pipeline, it's kind of ironic. I know because, the foundation is really dig into it, the short-term tragedy we're involved in with these sudden cutoffs and what that means. But, I've stayed very involved with the AI work at Microsoft and, what we understand about the immune system and the tools that are coming along. Innovation will make a huge, huge difference here. And so I think, my optimism is well justified despite an incredible emergency that we're living through right now.
Good. Okay, well, we will end there on that very positive note. Thank you both.
Thank you.
What do you do when you're facing the world's toughest challenges and it feels like the odds are stacked against you? You keep going. What do you do when you're trying to detect postpartum bleeding faster?
Postpartum hemorrhage is a total disaster. It's a big problem.
Zahira and her colleagues work tirelessly, testing a plastic drape that could alert when a mom's bleeding is getting critical.
We had one study after the other.
You keep going. What do you do when mosquitoes develop resistance to the insecticide in mosquito nets and malaria rates are soaring?
We needed a new generation of nets.
This took a period of almost about 8 years. At some point, we almost gave up.
You got this. Keep going. When you're trying to save newborns from dying of preventable diseases,
800,000 children used to die each year from neonatal tetanus.
Professor Mahdi and his team wouldn't give up until they found a solution.
For 20 years, we've investigated different types of vaccines.
Keep going. When you're dedicated to saving lives, you keep going and amazing things happen.
So the drips track the amount of blood loss from the mother. You are able now to accurately diagnose, and looking at the results, we had a staggering 60% reduction in excessive bleeding.
I mean, it was just phenomenal.
And going.
When we had the new nets, the proportion of children that were sick of malaria had reduced about 50%.
And going.
We give mothers a tetanus vaccine. The antibody from the mother transfers over to the baby, and the baby then is protected against neonatal tetanus. Each year, it saves close on to 750,000 deaths.
And going. Because in the face of every problem, there are people who prove that progress is possible.
The people who succeed in this are people who are prepared to get up and try again, and try again, and try again. They just won't give up.
The Gates Foundation, partners of human potential.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mavis Owusi-Jemfi, and I am the CEO and President of the African Center for Economic Transformation. It's a great honor to be here with you today. Over the last 2 decades, I have had the privilege of working with the Gates Foundation as a partner. First, as a co-financier when I was with the UK government, and later as a recipient grant when I worked with the Power of Nutrition, Save the Children, and more recently, ASSET. The foundation, to me, embodies 3 things in my partnership with them: clarity of purpose, drive for results, and respect for partners. The Gates Foundation has a clear purpose as a philanthropic organization: innovation. Bill, I was trying to count how many times you said innovation today, but I couldn't keep it up. So, whether it's supporting drones to deliver to rural communities, or helping mothers have healthier pregnancies, or saving the lives of newborn children, the Gates Foundation has always taken the risk to try something new, gathered evidence on what works and why, and ensure that the best ideas are scaled up. These ideas are not just generated in the US or London. They are generated in rural India, in urban Nigeria. They are generated by men and women who are actually affected by the problems that the Gates Foundation is trying to help solve. This has been a game changer for how we tackle health, economic policy, nutrition, and many more. The Gates Foundation has a powerful drive for results. In development, there are 1 million pilots that go nowhere, and most of this is because of poor policy. The foundation goes beyond project delivery. It invests in organizations like ours, whose bread and butter is to advise governments on how to create the right policy environment to grow and transform their economies. This ensures that businesses invest in countries, poor people have access to decent jobs, and governments can raise the revenues they need to ensure their people have access to services. This kind of investment that the Gates Foundation makes in organizations like ours, to be honest, doesn't make headline news. It's not sexy, but it is important. Because as Mark rightly wrote this morning, this support for systems reform is fundamental to transforming our economies and ensuring that the work that is being done today is sustained into the future. The Gates Foundation respects its partners. Now, this may sound simple, but they actually listen. And I know this from personal experience. If you have an idea they don't initially agree with, they don't just close the door. They ask the tough questions, and they take time to co-create to help make a good idea an even better idea. They navigate the space between multilaterals, governments, researchers, civil society, and more in the spirit of constructive partnerships. So rather than telling everybody what to do, they stop, they listen, and they work with you. As I reflect on the partnerships that I have had with the Gates Foundation, I am reminded of a quote that is often attributed to Mother Teresa. I can do things you cannot. You can do things I cannot. Together, we can do great things. The world today feels more fractured, less collaborative, and far more unequal than ever. As traditional donors are stepping back from global cooperation, it is easy to feel discouraged. We are in a long battle to leave the world better than we found it. Whether it's economic transformation, disease eradication, or women's economic inclusion, we are talking decades, not years. But with enough focus, enough resources, we can make substantial progress much more rapidly than we are seeing right now. And as everybody in the video said, we must keep. Oh, were you watching the video? As everybody in the video said, we must keep going. Thank you. So, I want to thank Bill Gates, Mark Sussman, and the entire Gates Foundation for showing exceptional leadership with their commitment today and bringing hope back to the conversation on our collective future. We have no choice but to work together to bring our best ideas, our best people, our best resources to the table in coalition, not in competition. This will ensure that the most vulnerable people in the world are protected and prioritized. I'm the granddaughter of a proud Ashanti woman, a market trader in Kumasi who used the resources she accumulated against the odds as a woman born in 1924 to investing in educating in her children and supporting her community. She was fondly referred to as Maamina Obuanipa, loosely translated as the lady who helps people. Just 2 generations later, her descendants include doctors, lawyers, scientists, architects, and dare I say it, the head of one of Africa's leading policy economic institutes, just to name a few. But most importantly, the many abandoned children she took in and nurtured from her community are thriving on the paths that they have selected for themselves. Because of her, I know firsthand the power of using wealth, no matter how small, to improve not just our own lives, but the lives of those around us and of those who will come after us. So, Bill, if I may, as you make this bold bet on our collective future, I want to leave you with a Ghanaian proverb that I hope can guide you and all of us forward. You must act as if it is impossible to fail, because that is what the world needs right now. Thank you for listening to me.
Please welcome Michael Bloomberg.
Bill, I was thinking, and you talked about 98% of your money going to make the world a better place. If you need some help on getting a new set of golf clubs, I know the guy that started Dick's Sporting Goods. Anyways, let me congratulate Bill and Mark and the whole team for 25 years of changing lives. And just think how different the world was 25 years ago. The home internet was connected made by dial-up. Music came on CDs. Most of you don't remember CDs or don't have a CD player at home anymore. And the closest thing to an AI-powered assistant was Microsoft's Clippy the paperclip. Let's just say I don't think you could ask Clippy to summarize the history of the Roman Empire in rhyme. But as usual, Bill was ahead of his times. Seriously, one of the biggest challenges of the last 25 years is how much more interconnected the world has become. And that's all thanks to technological innovation. And Bill helped spark that revolution at Microsoft. And as a philanthropist, he has continued to advance it in new ways. We are here in Carnegie Hall. I think that's the perfect place to celebrate all that Bill and his team has accomplished. Andrew Carnegie redefined the possibilities of philanthropies in the first quarter of the 20th century. And in the first quarter of this century, Bill and the Gates Foundation has raised the bar again. For 25 years, the Gates Foundation has helped to spread solutions globally to a wide variety of challenges, including public health, education, climate change, and poverty. And that work has saved and improved an awful lot of lives. And it has opened up opportunities for so many people around the world. But today, the rise of isolationism and politicizing of science is threatening to reverse that progress. And we just cannot let that happen. All of us in philanthropy and all in the private and public sectors have to find ways to collaborate and to do more. And I know the Gates Foundation will continue helping to lead the way. Of course, philanthropy can't solve every problem, but it can serve as a powerful catalyst for innovation and progress, especially when it serves as a platform for building partnerships. And let me just tell you one little story about a partnership that Bloomberg has with Gates. Back when our administration was in City Hall, Bill sent me an email that said, quote, "Mike, we have a chance to completely eradicate polio." And he asked if Bloomberg Philanthropies might be interested in partnering in the effort and making a commitment. The commitment he asked for was $100 million. Now, back when I was growing up just a few years ago, polio was every parent's nightmare. I am old enough to remember back in the 50s when the cover of Life magazine showed a gymnasium full of iron lungs and people's heads sticking helplessly out. Thanks to the discovery and spread of polio vaccines, the disease has vanished from most countries. But a few hundred cases remained, and in the handful of countries, but the bill wanted the public health community, they couldn't do it, we should do it together. And he asked if we would help end the threat of public health, for public health forever, and save countless resources dedicated to polio vaccine campaigns. It was a historic opportunity and a complex challenge, but Bill was involved, and I knew it would be data-driven, carefully thought out, and relentlessly determined to succeed. So I replied to Bill's email with just 2 words: "We're in." Yeah. But the truth of the matter is we didn't hear anything from the Gates Foundation for a couple of days. And then there was a sheepish call from one of the staff members. Nobody quite knew what you meant by "we're in." Anyways, in the years that followed, we made a lot of progress and even came very close to complete victory. Unfortunately, cases have been rising again recently, and cuts to the public health agencies have increased the risk of that trend is continuing. But I know the Gates Foundation isn't walking away from all this challenge. And neither are we. Patty Harris and all of the 350 people that work at Bloomberg Philanthropies are committed to doing our part. And together with Gates, we've taken on some of the biggest challenges in public health, like tobacco control and maternal health. And we've teamed up on an effort called Data for Health to close the enormous gap that prevents countries from effectively measuring and combating health challenges. And Bill showed you some slides about that. We're also working together to help combat climate change, which poses threats to people everywhere, and the same steps that cut emissions can also improve people's health and grow the economy. And that's why clean energy continues to grow. The market is speaking, and the more we work together, the faster we can make progress. The Gates Foundation has inspired so many others to get involved in building a brighter future, including the Giving Pledge, and I was glad to be one of the first to sign that. And partners of mine who started the company signed that as well. As a matter of fact, they go to your meeting every year. I just send a check. And so I've always thought that the ultimate in financial planning is to bounce the check to the undertaker. And I know Bill, yes, that's exactly right. I know Bill shares that philosophy. And it was great to see the news that the Gates Foundation will accelerate its giving. There is nothing more rewarding than making a difference in the lives of others. So why deny yourself the satisfaction? And few people have made a bigger difference in the world than Bill, and I know he'd be the first one to give credit to all of the talented people that his foundation has worked very hard every day. So let me congratulate everybody at the Gates Foundation on 25 years of achievement, and here's to all the future holds. And it is now my pleasure to introduce somebody who has found a lot of innovative ways to make a difference through her organization, Open Philanthropy. So welcome the great work she's doing, Carrie Tuna.
I met Bill 15 years ago at a recruiting dinner for the Giving Pledge. I was a 24-year-old journalist. He was a walking, talking encyclopedia about global health and extreme poverty at a time when my husband Dustin and I were just beginning to think seriously about giving. We didn't yet know what causes we'd focus on, but we knew we wanted to help others as much as we could. I started by studying the history of philanthropy, what had worked, what hadn't, and who made the biggest difference. I learned that the most important decision a philanthropist makes is what problems to work on. Most donors, almost by definition, come from relatively wealthy and healthy circumstances. And if we only give to the causes that are closest to us, we're going to miss many of the biggest opportunities to help others, especially the most disadvantaged. It takes a special kind of donor to focus on helping people you may never meet, who live in another part of the world and have deeply different life experiences, but have a shared humanity. Bill's giving, more than any other living philanthropist, exemplifies the impact that's possible when you pick the right problems. I've learned so much from the way he approaches the foundation's work, not just with deep dedication, but with urgency, curiosity, and genuine optimism that progress is possible. What's even more inspiring is that Bill's giving isn't guided by proximity or personal experience, it's guided by impact, by a willingness to tackle the biggest problems affecting the people with the fewest resources. To put it in perspective, when Bill and Melinda started the Gates Foundation in the year 2000, 10 million children under the age of 5 were dying worldwide each year. The HIV/AIDS epidemic was killing almost 2 million people annually, and nearly a third of the world lived in extreme poverty. In the 25 years since, the progress has been extraordinary. These accomplishments are so impressive, I'm going to repeat them. The mortality rate for children under 5 has been cut in half. Annual deaths from HIV/AIDS are down 65%, and fewer than 1 in 10 people now live below the poverty line. That progress was far from inevitable. It was partly the result of economic growth and technological innovation, yes, but it was also the result of concerted efforts by people and organizations, including the Gates Foundation, to make sure that growth and innovation benefited the world's poorest. But the gains of the past few decades aren't guaranteed to continue. Right now, they're at risk unless more of us step up and get involved. As donors, we need to follow Bill's example by getting curious, thinking bigger, and embracing the idea that all lives have equal value. Bill, thank you for reminding us that the right kind of ambition, grounded in evidence and driven by empathy, can change the world. You've inspired me and so many of us to do more and do it now. And now I'm happy to welcome the next speaker, Ajay Piramal.
My heartfelt congratulations to you, Bill, on this significant milestone of 25 years. And what a great milestone. You've changed the trajectory of global health. The Gates Foundation has been a relentless engine of breakthrough innovations. Innovations in life-saving vaccines to global alliances for endemic diseases. 1 million lives have been touched. 65 million deaths have been prevented in 150 countries. I don't know of anybody in history who has made such an impact in their own lifetime. And these are not just numbers. These are stories of children who have survived, of mothers who have lived, and of families who have rewritten history. I want to begin with a personal story. I met the President of India. She is a lady who was a tribal, comes from a small village in Orissa. And she told me one thing when we were talking about health, that at the age of 64, she was the oldest living person in her village. In tribal areas in India, the longevity is 11 years less than that of the rest of India. And this is where the Gates Foundation has been working and has brought down the maternal mortality rate by 74%. The Gates Foundation has been more powerful, not only because of what they do, but they do not do it alone, but by bringing great alliances, working with leading philanthropists, working with leading NGOs, with government and civil society. I think it takes a lot of vision and a lot of humility to get this to be done. I want to just share again a personal note of how philanthropy began in my family. My grandfather, who lived in a small village in rural Rajasthan, which is a desert area, in the early 1900s, decided to try his fortune and moved to Bombay with just $10 in his pocket. With his hard work, he did make a small fortune. But the legacy he left behind is that the first thing he did is to go back to his village and start 2 schools. These schools, the first school was for the lowest caste. At that time, caste was a big factor in India. They were the most underprivileged and ignored. The first student was a low caste person. The second school was that for girls, again, at a time when girls' education was not as popular. So there he was, working for those who were the most disadvantaged in society. The second thing that he taught us was the feeling, the way of serving, which in our language, in Hindi, would be called seva bhav, or what I would translate as service with love and compassion. It is service as when you are the giver of the service and you are the receiver of the service on the other hand. We are all on the same level. And this is the best example is that of a mother feeding her newborn baby. Yes, do you call that service? Yeah, in some ways it is going through a lot of challenges. You have to have sleepless nights, but you do it with love and it's joy. That's these 2 principles of working with the most disadvantaged and working with seva bhav has been the foundation of our philanthropy, where we have 5,000 workers working every day with this service attitude of seva bhav and with working in the most disadvantaged. And that has been in some ways, we share Bill's belief of that every life has equal value. Our work together with the Gates Foundation has seen that this belief, when it meets bold action, we can have huge outcomes. Let me give you an example. The last 3 years, we've been working in Bihar in the area of health. We have now done in 12,000 health centers in Bihar, digitized it. In addition, we've seen to it that 90% of all the essential medicines are available at any time in these health centers. And what has been the outcome since we are all focused on outcomes? We have seen that Bihar, which in health parameters was amongst the worst states in the country, has today become the #1. And what is even more remarkable is that we did this experiment and showed this to the government in just one district. Bihar has 39 districts, and in the rest of the districts, it was the government who put the money. So we've been able to multiply our investment by 15 to 20 times. And seeing this example, there are 3 other larger states, UP, Assam, and another one, where the governments are doing the same thing. So that has been the impact of just one example of what we've been able to do together. This has inspired us now to form a global alliance. India today is the 4th largest economy in the world, but there are almost 200 million people who've not been able to reach the full potential of their lives. And that is where we are working together to see how, in collaboration with global philanthropists, with Indian philanthropists, with the government, with society, and the community, how we can impact 200 million people and bring them up in our own lifetimes. It is not only a project for India, but a template for the global South. And as we've seen in other things, I think together we can solve the toughest challenges. It's not just by what and how much we give, but what we build. It's not just programs, but it is systems. It's not just outcomes, but ownership with communities that we want to do. Thank you, Bill, for your belief in India and showing the world what's possible. I now want to have introduced to you Dr. Taviro Makhandzange. Dr. Taviro.
Great, good afternoon, and thank you, Bill and the Foundation, for inviting me and for the incredible work that your philanthropy has done over the last decades. When I think about what inspires me and keeps me going, I return to a memory of training here in the United States, going to medical school at Harvard in the late 90s, and having patients who had access to antiretroviral therapy, and then going home to Zimbabwe and finding that there was no access. Family members, and this was not unique to myself, family members were dying in the absence of therapy. And I remember my first summer of medical school taking care of my aunt, who sadly died from advanced HIV disease. And I had the boldness of youth to believe that as a young African who was smart, hardworking, surely I could work to find a vaccine. And so ended up going to Oxford to see if I could be part of a team that was developing a vaccine for Africa. Sadly, 30 years later, we still don't have a vaccine, but despite that, a lot of progress has been made. Progress in understanding the virology, the biology of HIV, the development of antiretroviral therapies, manufacturing that has enabled low-cost access to therapy, and an incredible coalition between policymakers, healthcare workers, communities to improve access. And importantly, governments, global governments, the United States being a major part of it, local governments, but also philanthropy such as the Gates Foundation and other organizations really enable that access to take place. So today, millions of people across the globe have access to antiretroviral therapy, and unlike my aunt, are able to raise their children, have grandchildren, and ensure that their communities are healthy. It has also changed the face of our hospitals. We have fewer people with tuberculosis, cryptococcal meningitis dying in our hospitals. And we are at a moment where if we lose focus, we are at risk of slipping back to those days. So the role of philanthropy and leadership there is absolutely critical. I'd lastly just want to say that as Africa, we've seen a lot of innovation in health and commitment to health through HIV and tackling a number of infectious diseases. But COVID also exposed some vulnerabilities on the continent. So gaps in research, manufacturing capability, infrastructure meant that we were often lost in terms of access, and has really catalyzed the need for us in Africa to build the systems and build the life sciences ecosystem that enables us to innovate and develop therapies on the continent. So it's really wonderful to mark the 25th year of the Foundation's work in advancing equity, and to be a grantee of the Foundation, where we're now starting to think about how do we drive leadership in Africa, not only in science and innovation, but creating the policy framework that builds a life sciences industry on the continent and the capabilities to enable Africa to solve its own problems. If we start to look at the moment, 1 in 5 people on the continent are Africans. In the next 50 years, 1 in 3 people will be Africans. Most of the young people on the planet will be Africans. And we know that innovation comes from the youth. So investments that really enable us to invest in young innovators, young scientists on the continent, working on problems on the continent, will be critical to ensure that the next 20 years, 25 years and beyond create leadership in science and innovation on the continent. So thank you, and it's a pleasure and an honor to introduce John Baptiste. I never thought I would ever introduce John Baptiste, so thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. Wow, and at Carnegie Hall at that. Back at Carnegie Hall, and everybody watching the stream at home, I can assure you that the air conditioning in the facilities is working. Bill, thank you so much for having me here. It's great to connect, as those few years ago when you mistook my dad for me at the Time 100 event. And actually get to know each other and to learn about the work that you're doing. It's so admirable, beyond admirable, to witness the impact firsthand. And I look forward to many, many more years of impact. And I think that it's tremendous what's happening. I'll tell you how I see it. You know, we've seen, it's been a tour de force of innovation and technology, science, incredible, incredible strides beyond our imagination in years of humanity. But to me, that's not what it's about. What it's mostly about, above anything, is love. It's about love. Simple. And how do we show that love for one another? It's about love in a time where the love of many has grown cold. We don't see each other. We don't have the perception into each other's humanity, our shared humanity, that divinity that's within us, whatever you want to call it. And that's the thing that's exciting for me. That's what's exciting to think about, what could come of a moment like this. You know, I really believe the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. But it's up to us to get up there and grab that thing and bend it. It's up to us to move. We get to wake up every day with this life force energy in our soul, that light that's within us, that thing that's there that allows for us with our free will, our ideas, our imagination, to see a world and actually create that world in front of us. We can get up and decide to do something. We can actually get up and decide to be the thing that needs to be. Can you imagine that power that we have? You can do that with tremendous resources and follow the example of my friend Bill, or you could do it with whatever you have. I was researching, I was thinking about the beginning of philanthropy and where did that come from? Where did that instinct come from? You know, the idea, philos plus anthropos, you know, love of humanity. It goes back to Greek literature, but it goes even further back. It's way, way further back. I think the first philanthropists were people who were in their village or in their tribe and they saw something, they were like, man, the next generation that's coming up behind us, they're gonna want clean water. They're gonna wanna figure out how to not have to deal with what we have to deal with these elements. How can we fix this? How can we move this forward in a way that maybe it would be better? And that tradition is continued because deep within us, there's an elemental empathy. There's a fundamental humanity that tracks from the beginning of time. And it's a choice that we have to make when we wake up in the morning. What do we want to aim at? We got to have a higher value system than self-preservation. We have to have a higher value system than just efficiency and scale in the name of profit. Efficiency and scale in the name of love. That's what this is about. That's what all of it is. And I'm so grateful to be here, to be a part of something that is so tremendous of an opportunity. It's almost beyond what we can articulate. It's unimaginable. There's things that we can imagine and see and track and data can follow. And there's things that are unimaginable that when you put things in motion and the momentum of our collective humanity, our talents, our abilities, our visions come together, it's unstoppable. And that's the power that we have in this world because we're all one. That's the power of who we all are. And when I think about it, it gets me emotional to be able to alchemize our woes into triumphs. That's magic. When I play music, that's one of the great joys that I have, to see someone in the audience, when I'm singing or dancing or playing my piano, whatever is happening, they just key into one element of it, and you can see the alchemy happening. You can see the shift happening from within. You can see it in their eyes. The eyes are the window, so I can look in somebody's eye. I look at you right now, I can see this. There's a connection. That's our power as human beings. We live with that within us. We might lose track of it, but we can always get right back in touch with it. If you're in a dark place out there, you can always get back in touch with it. So, you know, as I speak to close us out, I just want to say thank y'all for showing up. Thank you, Bill, for showing up. You didn't have to do it. You don't have to do all of the things that you've done, but you've done it. And as an example, we can do it. We can do it in our own way. It's incredible to think about what we can do together. So I commend you and I encourage you. And lastly, I challenge you. Let's do it. Are y'all ready to go? Yeah. Bill, Mark.
All right, man.
Yes, indeed. Let's see.
All right. I think we're asking all of our speakers to please come on stage and join us just to say thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Please make your way downstairs for the lunch reception.